Yeah, so while I'm in here, I'll just say quickly, this book is a collection of journal entries, daily news items that Elise Engler has drawn into pages and pages and pages, what day after day of the year 2020. So what would I say to Elise Engler if I was in conversation with her? I think I would talk about the fact that we all enjoy documenting. So I think that the takeaway is that things are slow, and they're going to remain slow, and maybe that's not bad. So things may be slow, but at the same time, they're not so slow, as you can see from that line of folks. There's definitely activity, and there's definitely a move forward, a move forward. So I think one thing that 2020 should tell us is that everything can go crazy, and in comparison, a year like 2022 is looking like it's going to be less drama, and less drama is actually a good thing. So there's less drama, and we're seeking resolution. Oh, got somebody to say hello. That's nice. So there's hope. Let me begin by asking you, what can you tell us about the whole idea of documenting? Because that is become so common. Now everyone documents in a certain way, from selfies on up. What can you tell us about documenting as it concerns you?
I've been documenting in some way or another, for 30 years and maybe even longer. But I did a project, the first kind of, I would say, seriously documentary type project I did was I drew every single thing I owned, and that was in the mid 90s. So I drew 13,000, I always forget what the number is at this point, but over 13,000 objects in colored pencil, everything in my apartment. So that was the beginning of kind of serious documentation.
Well, that's a wonderful place to pursue a little bit. So what possessed you to just go ahead and do that, to document everything in your room or apartment?
I was actually working on a large series of paintings, and they involved a kind of icons, like little objects that would serve as symbols, and they were kind of scattered on a field. And I wanted to develop more of these little icons, so I started drawing objects. And then simultaneously, I had some friends come over for dinner who have a very minimal way of living, and if they have a third or fourth dinner guest, they have to go out and buy paper plates, whereas I have like settings for 50. So they were kind of shocked. So it was the amount of my objects and this search for icons.
Oh, that's wonderful. So would you say that your art career, the themes you've pursued, have taken on a life of their own? You didn't set out to document items as you were beginning as an artist, I imagine, or did you have that in your mind?
I found a drawing I did when I was 6, and it had a list of all the new clothing I wanted in little tiny pencil pictures. So, you go to art school, you do all this training, and then you find things that you were doing before you even knew that an art school existed. So I'm not sure how to answer that question, except that I've been sort of doing that forever.
So you pursue whatever you're compelled to pursue. Closely tied into the idea of collecting and documenting is the idea of a news junkie. And for me, growing up, I was the kid who was always into current events, but now it's so common. Could you talk about how would you describe being a news junkie?
I am the daughter of a political economist. My father was a was engaged in anti-war politics in the civil rights movement. So I grew up in it. I can't say I discovered it on my own. I really grew up in the middle of. I went to demonstrations when I was old enough to walk. So
Yeah, I think I picked it up from my grandfather more than my father. I wanted to show some images from your book, and they're no particular order. And so you can feel free to comment as we go through them. I think of this whole process as a, and it might sound crass, mining for gold, but some images are more iconic than others, or they are more transcendent, I guess. Like this one of John Lewis is just so beautiful.
well, I wanted to give him his due. Give him a presence, and he actually has a special place in this project because in 2017, I think it was, I was doing this because this started in 2015, and he Trump was so rude to him, and it was on the same day that that Barnum and Bailey had decided to, Ringling Brothers had decided to close up shop, and so I had this. It was sort of this strange gift in that I had John Lewis being insulted, and then these cavorting elephants that came across my screen as in an image, and the fact that they were closing. So it was the first time I actually did more than one image was with John Lewis. So I felt like not to take away from but I mean his importance as a congressman is huge, but he also had this significance in my drawings.
Yeah,
I have great respect for him, and he's a missed person, like so many articulate, intelligent leaders the nature of our Congress at this point, there's so many people who are such buffoons.
yeah, what you describe is so cinematic, and it's so sad and poignant and ironic that he rose out of turmoil and he passed on during turmoil. And then there's of course this like iconic image. I don't know if that was scripted or if just spontaneous for Nancy Pelosi to just tear up that speech.
Who knows? But it certainly had its drama.
I think it might have been spontaneous.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It was just, what else would you do with that? Almost, you don't want to give it any dignity.
And then this one is more like a lot of different things going on. So it's not one of the more iconic images, but it's one of a great example of your documenting of things that they could are going to be overtaken by other events, since news is such a force of nature, just ongoing. And this is a great reference to the Mueller report, which I mean, the Mueller report has been so disparaged by certain people, and it was.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it was the roadmap to impeachment, the roadmap to indictments, and I guess Mr. Mueller did the best he could. But,
and then Barr took away any of its power.
Yeah. And then this one, going back to an interview you did, I know this was very personal to you. This is so close to where you are, to see these tents go up in Central Park.
Yeah, I felt my drawings change as, it's one thing to be drawing the world at large, and not that certainly the election affected me, and I did have local stories. I'm a cyclist, so I always recorded the bicycling accidents, because that was part of local news here. But this pandemic, it really, we saw it from a distance. It was on the West Coast, and then all of a sudden it was in New York, and then it was and then it was the ambulances going by my apartment. I live a few blocks from a hospital. It just, the way it closed in. And I wanted the drawings to have that feeling like I wasn't on the edge. I was really, we here in New York were in the center.
Well, it's quite a striking image, and looking at the trees and how they mirror those horrendous billionaire skyscrapers, which were very jarring for me when I was visiting New York more recently, like 2019, having not been there in many years, to see those sticks up there.
Oh, they're awful.
And then here's another, what I would consider a gem, a transcendent moment where you end up doing a double portrait, a self-portrait.
Yeah, I was, that was the first time I really was wearing a mask, and I took an old bra and cut it up and turned it to a mask on the black side. And then, we all were, taking anything we could find. I had a bandana, so.
Oh yeah.
Bras and bandanas.
Yeah, I remember very well how no one knew exactly what to wear at first. And then this one is also iconic, and I think it speaks to your working process. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that what you were doing is the primary source was the news of the day in the morning, so that allowed you some time to process what had happened the day before. Would I be wrong to say that?
Well, I would listen in the morning. So generally it is the day before's news, definitely. So and the rule was that I had to hear it to draw it. So I had to hear it that morning to draw it. Or sometimes it would be the middle of the night, but it would be the day that I would do it. So yeah, so I heard, so actually, the George Floyd was murdered the day before, but that was when it became the news was on, that's when it led the news headlines, was the next morning.
And it's so jarring I didn't remember this, or I don't think I knew this at the time, that incident in Central Park also happened on that same time period. Very strange.
And the headline in the Times with the 100,000.
Yeah. And then here, the portrait of a president, which speaks to his being so tone deaf. He's supposedly the wizard of marketing, and for him to be so tone deaf, it's baffling. And then just the opposite, we have this wonderful portrait of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
That was not unexpected, but devastating nonetheless. And I wanted to really make her feel like her as much as I possibly could.
And I think I just have one more here, and this one has a nice iconic feel to it. All those images, they as I saw them, the one on the upper left corner, I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, this is something. This is something. And that was before it was clear to everyone what was going on. But we saw it repeated over and over again. So they just instantly became embedded into the collective memory.
Yeah, I was screenshotting away. That's what my process is, to just, to watch them. Once I heard the news, I would go online and screenshot as much as possible from videos, but also from still photographs, and then try and be respectful of their origins. So I didn't copy them exactly, certainly if they were people's photographs, and then kind of manipulate them to make them work within the rectangle. But yeah, I had so many images to work from, and I wanted to make it feel as chaotic and as that so many things were happening during that time period, along with the Georgia election.
Yeah,
I mean, John Ossoff.
I wanted to maybe get your thoughts a little bit on how, or I guess the instinct kicks in. That's what it would happen to me. I would say this is something when you saw the election of Trump and then the presidency of Trump, just the political theater of all that. And the commentators at the time, and even today, they kind of hold back. They say, well, not in recent memory have we seen this. We've never seen this, as I think you could probably safely say.
No, I mean, he's like something out of Sinclair Lewis, sort of Elmer Gantry, that whole kind of, yeah, the kind of snake oil salesman, or
Yeah,
who's just completely not, I mean, and not, none of this was doctrinaire. It was just about self, about himself, obviously. But I wanted, it's, the whole book, you might notice that there are not a lot of drawings of Trump for a huge section of it. I kind of banned him. He would be just represented by a little bit of his hair as a profile, because I felt like I didn't want to make him center stage, because that's so much what he wanted. So
yeah.
that's one reason why you'll see in a lot of it, there's a large swath of drawings. He doesn't appear, or he does in a very tiny bit of the drawing.
Which is a perfect way to do it, because I think he had this very vague idea of what he wanted to do, as far as, I'm going to take over, I'm going to do this and that, Steve Bannon, all of it is such at a shallow level, and it's so
Yeah.
obvious. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think, what thoughts come to mind in comparison with the Biden dynamic? I think everyone wants to pile on and criticize Biden, but he's certainly, one major contribution is he's brought back a traditional, more normal presidency. There's a major downtick in drama.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, I think his hands are obviously tied by the circumstances and by the nature of the Congress, but I do hope that I wish he would be less hesitant about going ahead and prosecuting. I mean, I think there's so many ways that he could go after the former president, and that he's being sort of, I don't know what he's being. I'm not sure what holds him back, but, I mean, Biden has been a part of that world for so many decades. I know he may feel loyalties to the office, but I mean, he's not dealing with somebody who has any loyalties to the office. So I think if that has anything to do with it, I don't know whether his advisors are telling him not to go after Trump, but it seems to me that he's a dangerous force, and I can't even think about the future.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin with that, because I'm tempted to say, well, if Trump does seek re-election, which he seems to be heading in that direction, and the Republicans end up nominating him, would that bring you back to doing this project, or would you say, oh, I've had enough of it? Or
I've been doing, I do an occasional drawing now, because I discovered I kind of missed it. There was a discipline to the getting up every morning, and also I'm going to get back to your question, but that when Trump was elected, I was at the McDowell, the residency McDowell, and a lot of artists in conversation, we were talking about, oh, what are we going to do? I can't keep doing the work I'm doing. And I thought, I really can, because I started this a year before that presidency. So, and it was a great way to actually respond and to channel my frustration and my, the disturbance I felt with that whole period. So, it was just on a personal level, it was a wonderful way to be able to react and respond. And so many of people became reliant on my work for news. I mean, I had people who said, I can't listen to the news anymore. I look at your drawings and that's all I do. So, so when I stopped doing it, I needed a break. I mean, it had been, and the thought of going on after Biden, it wasn't as interesting in a certain way. And also, 5 years is enough. But
yeah,
I discovered that every once in a while, I hear a story and I want to draw it. So I now have an occasional news project, which I've done maybe 8 or 9 drawings since I stopped. So,
oh, that's a good way to
yeah,
keep your hand in it.
yeah, I have my cake and eat it too, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder, I just have like a couple more questions. I wonder what you could maybe share with us about your overall working process, or is that even a possible way can you possibly answer that? Or how do you tackle a project? Or
Well, I'm project oriented. I mean, that's for sure. So, I mean, I did this for 5 years. Before that, I did the, I had a really bad bike accident. So I actually documented that for a year, a couple of years. I spent documenting the recovery from that. But before that, I drew all of Broadway from top to bottom in Manhattan. So I sat on every block and I drew that block. So that's I sort of have, I think all artists create rules for themselves.
Yeah.
And, so I had a series of rules for how I would draw Broadway, how I would do this project. Um, so that's one part of my process. At the moment, actually, I'm making very large oil paintings, and that's kind of something that I did many years ago, and it's nice to go back to that. So
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah, so it's good to be kind of painting, and it's a different kind of, when you do a 1 day drawing, it's 1 day, and I never went back. I never touched them after they were done. They were done. I knew I had a day. I knew I had a certain number of hours because I had to go to work or I had to do, there was an end usually to the time I had upon doing them. But it's a different engagement when you're working on a painting and you're kind of, you can make changes and you can scrape stuff off, and it's more. There's a different kind, not a spontaneity. There's a kind of choreography that's different. It's more back and forth. So that's a different process. But I think I will always do go back and forth between doing a kind of daily work or kind of one shot like these and then longer pieces.
What can you tell us about artists that inspired you? Are there some artists that stand out that you might want to mention?
Well, my muse for many, many years has been Florine Stettheimer, who I don't know if you're familiar with her, but
No, I don't think so.
she's a New York-based artist. She she she's kind of a history painter, but very whimsical and funny and quite wonderful. She had a show. She had a couple of shows she's long dead. I forget what year she died. I'm not very good with years, but she did a series of paintings which are in the Metropolitan Museum, which are called the Cathedrals of New York. So there's the Cathedral of Broadway, the Cathedral of Wall Street, the Cathedral of Shopping or Fifth Avenue, I think, and the Cathedral of Art. And they're large and they have historical monuments in them, but they also have lots of fantastically painted people. And all of the people are real people. So every character in her painting is some person who could have been in that particular painting at that time. And those were done starting, I think, 1929 to about 1944. So she's one person I love. I love the C&Es. Those are my people. Florine Stettheimer, the C&Es, Marston Hartley. That's a bit.
Very
I could
New
go
York.
on. I have tons of artists I love, but
So very, very urban, very New York.
well, I don't know if the C&Es, I suppose, were urban in Siena, but Marston Hartley was Maine painter.
Oh, I'm thinking maybe I'm placing him in the Ashcan School or something.
No, Marston Hartley's more Maine.
Okay.
Rural painter, more sea, ocean, but also figures.
Okay.
Landscape, though, landscape and figures, but a very particular. Oh, and Philip Guston.
Okay. Let me ask you just one last question. What can you tell us about you as a teacher at teaching? I guess you're doing Zoom classes more than anything these days? Or?
Yeah, well, this is our winter break, and it probably looks like I'll be going back and teaching in person in February. But yes, I teach. I teach a narrative drawing class at the School of Visual Arts, which is online actually. And then I teach an education class about the art of asking questions.
And since we love to document, what can you tell us right now as you're talking about your concerns with COVID? Are you feeling more confident or what can you tell us?
Oh, well, once again, it seems supposedly our numbers are going down here in New York, but it's what every single day I hear about somebody sort of getting closer and closer. I don't know. I'm a swimmer. I'm a distance swimmer. I spend a lot of time in chlorine. So I have a kind of, it's a joke. Really, I'm not saying that this has anything to do with why I don't have COVID yet, because at
Oh,
any
sure.
moment I could. But I feel like I am so completely infused with chlorine that maybe, it's the one thing that Trump was right about. Chlorine, he told us to drink it. I'm like, no, I'm not telling anybody do
No,
not drink
no.
it. But I feel like, I can't figure out, everyone I know has had it lately. It's just gotten closer and closer, including all sorts of dear friends and family. And so I'm hoping it's lifting. I'm hoping, they're telling us that our numbers are that it's getting better here in New York, but we've heard that before.
Yeah, yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
just remain vigilant and careful and get very frustrated when I see people on the subway not wearing masks.
Yeah, we can't let our guard down.
No.
Well, this book is delightful. It's very unique to put it mildly. And unless there's anything else you wanted to add, I'm just so thrilled to have had a chance to chat with you for a bit,
I would
Elise.
like to add that I'm very grateful to the people at Metropolitan Books, to Reva Hokerman, for approaching me and saying that she wanted to make my drawings into a book. And it's been an incredible learning experience for me, because it's one thing to make art, and to make art that has all these disparate pieces, and it becomes something very different when it's encased in a volume, and all the things that go into making a book. Having never, I've made my own, I have a printer, I've made my own artist books, but it's a very different thing than actually making a book that has, a real cover and a forward and and all the end papers and just the layout. And, I'm so grateful that I worked with somebody who had such a wonderful aesthetic and an eye and a way of making choices. The font and all of the things that a book entails. You realize as a visual artist, that's a whole nother world, which, it's a whole nother skill set, which I certainly don't have. So I feel amazingly fortunate to have worked with people who had such high standards and were able to take all my drawings and turn them into this book, which, it's an incredible gift as an artist to have that happen.
Well, yes, I do remember reading that, and the acknowledgments. You do mention that, and I've heard this before from other creators, that a lot of things just aren't planned ahead of time. Like, you had this project you began in 2015. It took on a life of its own, but you weren't planning on a book at any point necessarily.
I thought about it, and I
Yeah.
thought, and I actually had said to okay, when I'm done after a year, because I was going to finish it in 2016 at the end, December 31st, then I'll see if I can make it a book. But, that was kind of somewhere in my head.
Well, and then in hindsight, you can say, well, it all worked out the way it was supposed to. And that, of course, it is, because you honed a certain skill set, a certain way of doing things. And then you were ready for when 2020 came around.
I was ready. I was ready. I was fortunate, it's not too bad to be quarantined when your sources are all in your house anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Elise.
Well, thank you. Really, I appreciate your wanting to interview me, and thank you for appreciating the book.
Oh, you bet.